What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So in our last video we talked about this guy. This is the ZimaBoard 832. If you haven't seen that video yet, link is in the description box below, so make sure you check it out. In this video, I'm going to be installing OPNsense on this guy because this is going to act as the firewall for the lab environment that I'm currently working. We're going to break everything down and go through the whole installation process step by step. Here are some of the things that we will cover in this video. We'll talk about what OPNsense is and how it differs from other firewall solutions. We'll talk about why you may not have to use a firewall in your lab environment, but you definitely should. We'll talk about the hardware we're using and how everything is physically connected. And then we'll go through the full installation process along with some of the basic configuration to get us up and running. So let's get right into it. OPNsense is an open source firewall and routing platform built on FreeBSD. It was created as a fork of pfSense, aiming to provide better security, modern interface, and a regular update. So one of the key differences between OPNsense and other firewall solutions is its focus on security and performance. It includes features like built-in intrusion detection and prevention, a proxy server, and two-factor authentication, all out of the box. Another big advantage that I personally love a lot is the user interface. So unlike some firewall that feels outdated or overly complicated, OPNsense has a very clean and responsive web UI that makes managing and configuring the firewall much easier. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to go with it this time around, because I've used, as I said before in my previous video, I've used pfSense before, and there's this whole debate about which is better. I think it's just a matter of preference in my opinion, and what exactly you want your firewall to do. But I do think that as far as the web UI go, OPNsense does like a really good job at having this clean and very nice user-friendly UI. Plus, OPNsense has a strong plugin system, allowing you to extend its capability without bloating the core system. Overall, OPNsense is a powerful, flexible choice, whether you are securing your home lab, a small business, or a large network. It's beautifully designed and it has a lot of features that will allow you to start learning a lot of this concept that you need to learn about firewall. And it allows you to be able to have something as well to be able to secure your lab environment, because that's very important. Speaking of your lab environment and firewall, the question becomes, do you have to use a firewall in your lab environment? And technically the answer to that is no, but should you? Absolutely yes. If you run in services in your lab environment, they will eventually be exposed to threat, whether intentional testing or misconfiguration or just the nature of network system. Even if your lab isn't connected to the internet, security still matters. A firewall helps control traffic and protect your environment. It lets you define what's allowed in and out, reducing the risk of unauthorized access. Another key reason is network segmentation. Instead of putting everything on a single network, a firewall lets you create separate zones so a compromised device doesn't automatically put everything else at risk. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier. When you're just starting to learn how to build things and you're just starting to learn how to configure things, it's guaranteed that whatever it is that you configure, you're going to have some sort of misconfiguration. So you want to be able to be in a protected zone or create a zone that's specifically dedicated for mistakes. So even if you're not configuring things correctly, you know that that zone is protected and it's not going to put other things that you have in your network at risk. So while you could run your lab environment without a firewall or any sort of firewall, because again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a physical firewall. It can be a virtualized firewall. It can be something else, but yes, you can run your lab environment without any sort of firewall whatsoever, but it's like leaving your front door unlocked. You might definitely not get hacked at all, right? So you might do things and never get hacked. But why take that risk? Why not have some sort of a firewall to help add this layer of protection, to help protecting yourself while you learn how to build things? Another reason as well is that there's a lot of things that you can learn from having a firewall in place. There's a lot of concept that you can learn from having a firewall in place, and having something like that in place will teach you a lot of stuff about firewall, because a lot of places when you go work somewhere, that is a small office or anywhere else, they're definitely going to have some sort of firewall in place. That's my argument as to why you you should get a firewall in your lab environment. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to download the OPNsense ISO, and then we want to bond that ISO into an image. So just like all the other stuff that we've gone through, you're definitely going to need a USB stick. So I'm going to take this USB stick and insert it into my computer that I'm using, or you can insert it into whatever it is that you're using. So once you insert that in there, the next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and go to OPNsense. So that's OPNsense, and then it's the first link here. So this is basically the OPNsense website. A lot of good information here, a lot of how-tos, and a lot of things that you might need to get started. So once we click on download, it's going to take us to the download page. It's going to tell us what the system architecture is, and then if you scroll down a little bit, it's going to give us different set of image that you can select, and they've done a good job at defining what each image type is. So in our case, we want the ISO installer. So we want the DVD. So we want to go ahead and say DVD. If you click on this drop down, it gives you an option. So we'll say DVD. And then this one is the mirror. It doesn't really matter. You can choose different mirror if you choose to, depending on where you live, I suppose. But for me, that's fine. And this is the checksum. The checksum basically is kind of like a hash to tell you that that file or the folder hasn't been messed with since it was uploaded. It's a very good thing to check, ideally when you are installing this in a very, in a production-like environment, so to speak. If you install this somewhere and you have to be very careful about security, because you don't want someone to have made changes to a specific file. You download it, you install it, the next thing you know, you have some sort of like entryway into your network from the get-go. So be careful about that. I'm going to show you guys how to check this, or I am going to check this on my Windows computer. I'm going to use PowerShell. Once you do, what you want to do is you want to go ahead and click download, and it's going to start downloading. So we're going to give it a couple of minutes. It is a bit of a heavy file, so it's going to take a couple of seconds or about a minute or so to download. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to check the checksum to make sure that it matches what is on the website. So to do that, PowerShell does have a commandlet. Let me see. So it's the hash, the get file hash commandlet right here. That's what we're going to use. So it's what is it? GT. What is a get file? So we need this guy, and then we want to tell it what the algorithm, and then we want to say SHA. I think it's SHA-256. That's what it's using. So we'll click on that, and then we want to specify the path. This is the path to the folder. So we just click enter on that. And I'm going to grab that path real quick. I'm just go ahead and do that. You're not going to see that because I'm doing it on the other window, but I'm grabbing the path, and it's pretty straightforward. So wherever you download that stuff, you're just going to go to it, right click on it. This is in Windows, by the way. There's a different way to do it in Linux computer as well. So on a Linux as well. So if you have a Linux, you can look that up, and there should be a way to do the same thing. So we're going to copy the path, and then we're just basically going to do a space, and then we're going to paste that path here. So basically what this is going to do is going to check the checksum accent is down the kick, and you're going to check the checksum on this file or this folder to make sure that it matches what is on the website, just to make sure that this folder hasn't been tampered with since it was uploaded for us to download. So if you click go ahead and play, so this is the checksum that it gives us. So this is the hash, this is the checksum that it ran, and this is the hash value that we need. So we want to make sure this hash value is the same as the one on the website. So I'm going to go ahead and then close this guy now, and then go ahead and go back to the websites. But anyway, this is how you do it for on a Windows computer if you want to check the hash value for a specific folder. On Linux, again, it might be different there. So it's a matter of, it's pretty much, you can do it on the command line too, but it's just the command, of course, is different. Okay, so now we're back on the website. So what we want to do is we want to do Control F, and then we'll paste the stuff that we copy from PowerShell. So Control V, you're going to see that it matches this hash value right here. So that's what we want. We want to make sure that, just to check and make sure that whatever we download in has not been tampered with, because if it has been tampered with, then changes can be made to that file, and when you install it, you have this sort of vulnerability on your system even before you get started setting things up. And with a firewall, you definitely don't, You don't want a vulnerability on your firewall. That's that's for sure. That's the wrong place to have some sort of vulnerability. But anyways, that's how you check the checksum on Windows, and again on Linux it might be a little bit different. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to download 7-zip. 7-zip will allow us to be able to extract the ISO from the folder that we just downloaded, and I'll show you guys in a minute. If you try to do it in Windows when you just right click extract, it failed for some reason. I think it's the way that the package was bundled, or the way the package was put together. I run into several issues when I try to extract it using like the Windows extract feature, but I'll show you guys in a minute. But what we want to do though is we want to download 7-zip. So 7-zip is pretty straightforward to install. So you just go 7-zip, click on that, and it's this guy right here. It's a really good tool to have as well. It's really good at extracting and doing a whole bunch of other stuff. So I need this version 64x64, 64-bit Windows x64. So download that, and it's going to go ahead and do its thing. So once you download 7-zip, it will look something like this. You can just double click on it to run it, and it pretty much runs. There's nothing to it. So what I was saying is that if you right click on this, right, on Windows, you can click extract all. But what I found is that when you do that, you run into some issue, and it doesn't extract all of the files. So it doesn't extract the ISO, and don't waste your time, just use 7-zip. So I just wanted to show you guys. So this doesn't work. So if you click extract all, it doesn't work for some reason. Again, it could be the way the file was put together. I'm not sure exactly what the reasoning is behind that, but it doesn't work. So just keep that in mind. 7-zip is pretty straightforward. It looks something like this. You're going to go to the folder where that the OPNsense is downloaded. In my case, it's in the download folder, the downloads folder. So just go to whatever, navigate to whatever folder you have that stuff downloaded to. This is the folder. This is the one that we just run the checksum on. You just double click on it, and inside of it you're going to see the ISO, and that's what we need. So to extract it, you just go up here and then tell 7-zip, hey, extract this. You're going to see another window that comes up. It's going to tell you where do you want to extract it. You're just going to say I want to extract it in the sum folder, which is download folder. You click OK. It's going to go through the process of extracting it. Pretty straightforward, pretty quick. It takes a few seconds because it is a bit of a heavy file. It's not too big, but it's a good size. So it's going to take some time to extract it, but once it extracted, you will have the ISO file. So once it's done extracting, you're going to see the ISO. So what we want to do, I'm going to just do this real quick. I'm going to go one level back in the download folder. And now you can see that we have ISO that we can bond to the USB that we have inserted in our computer. So let's go ahead and try to do that. Okay, so to be able to bond the ISO that we just extracted to a USB, we're going to need to use something like Etcher, or you can use Rufus, whichever one works for you. I used Rufus in my last video, so I'm using Etcher on this one. I just kind of spread the love a little bit. But you can use Etcher. Etcher allows you to be able to bond ISO to DVD. So you're going to go to Etcher. You're going to just go to Google and type in Etcher, or you can just go directly to the website. Scroll down, and you're going to see the download section right here. You just click on download. It's going to go ahead and do its thing. And then once it's downloaded, you're just going to go ahead and run it. So once you run Etcher, you're going to click on this. So I've already selected this. So you're going to click on the plus sign. It's going to select your ISO. So once you select your ISO, it's going to look like this, and you're going to bond it to the flash drive. It already recognized the flash drive, and then you're just going to click on flash, and it's going to do its thing. It's going to give you a prompt that asks you like, hey, this stuff is going to run. Do you want to allow it? Just click yes. And Etcher is going to go and then bond that ISO to the USB drive, which is perfect, which is what we're looking for. So let's give it a few minutes and let it do its thing. Okay, so once it's done, it's going to look something like this. It's going to tell you that flash completed successfully. So that means that we're good to go. So now what we're going to do is we are going to remove that USB drive, of course, from the computer, and then we're going to move on to the next step. Okay, so I wanted to talk about the device a little bit, just talk about the basic connection, just to kind of get a better understanding of how things should be connected. So here you have the power cable already connected to the device, and you have the power indicator to show that the device is on. So this is my WAN cable. So this is coming directly from the ISP router. So basically all you have to do is just connect this guy. So you want to connect it, any one of this will do fine, because once you get into OPNsense, then you'll be able to kind of make that change, kind of define which one is WAN and which one is LAN. But for now, it should be able to pick it up automatically. So you just connect, and this is my WAN cable. And then I have a mini PoE switch here. I forget that it's PoE, but just it's a mini switch. So this is going to act as the LAN. So once we have things set up, this is what the LAN. So I have a cable here. So this is the cable. So this is what we're going to connect here, and this is going to act as the LAN while I send things up. So once we have this set up, we're going to have to connect our computer here to be able to access the GUI or the GUI for the OPNsense firewall. So for now, this is what the LAN is. So basically you have two connections so far. We have the WAN coming from outside in, and then you have the LAN, which is your kind of local area network. And this is what we're going to connect to be able to access the firewall after we set things up. Because ideally, once you have everything set up, the way it should be is that you have your WAN coming in, and then your firewall is able to kind of, monitor your traffic that's going in and out, control the ports that are open, and all those other good things that a firewall is supposed to do. And then of course you have your LAN connection, which physically is underneath your putting that there too, but physically it's underneath your firewall, and anything that's connected here is supposed to be protected by the firewall, right? So that's the way it's supposed to look. So the next thing you want to do, this is the ISO that we just bound, right? So the ISO that we just bound is bound to this USB. So now we just want to take that, and you can connect it to either one of this guy. It doesn't really matter, right? You can connect it to one of those guys and to be able to pick that up. And then the next thing you want to do is that, because this is kind of the initial setup is not really a headless setup, right? We're going to need to be able to see what's going on. And for me to be able to show you guys exactly what's going on, we're going to need to connect a micro display stuff here. So this is the micro display cable. So connect it there, and then should be able to cast what is being shown on this device onto the screen so you guys can see it. And then the last thing you want to do is that you want to connect the keyboard to it. Once you're in the GUI, once you go through the setup, the initial setup for OPNsense, you're going to need some sort of thing to be able to navigate the options that is there. So you want to connect this guy is the keyboard to the last port. So now every port is pretty much connected, right? Except for the additional ports, the PCIe, and then that's those, we're not using those. So you have the display, you have the LAN connection, you have the WAN connection, you have a keyboard, you have the USB, and you have the power. So now this is what the device looks like. So we have a very small basic network, right? This is what it looks like. So we're good to go on that end. So we're going to power on the device now, and then we are going to go through the OPNsense installation. One of the things to keep in mind is that there is no power button on the device, so there's no turn it off and turn it on. So to turn it off and turn it on, you physically have to disconnect it and then reconnect it, right? So there is no, unless I'm missing something, I don't see any power button on the device when I was going through it.
Okay, so now that we have the device connected and ready to go, and we have the USB inserted into it, we're going to power on the device, and we're going to make a couple of changes before we start the installation. So let me go ahead and power on the device now. Okay, so the device should be coming on. So once the device is coming on, I want to press the delete key because I want to get into the BIOS. So I'm going to go ahead and press the delete key. And then it's going to take me to the BIOS pretty quick. And then, like we did the last time on my previous video, we're going to click on the boot option. I've already made that change, right? So you're going to go to boot option 1, click on that, and then change that. So what you want to do is you want to say you want the boot option to be the USB. So that's the USB that we have inserted, which is the first one. We'll just go ahead and click enter. And that is going to be boot option 1. So the way it works is that if it boots and USB is connected, it will boot to that. If USB is not connected, it will go down the list from there. But I wanted to boot from the USB, so we're going to go ahead and then just click save. As I said, I've already made that changes, but I wanted to show you guys. So we're going to go ahead and click save and exit. It's going to ask us if we want to save it. We'll say yes. So now it's going to boot up. You see OPNsense going into the USB, and it's going to go through this process. So the boot up process in itself takes a while, so do be patient while it goes through the boot up process. Don't stress out. Okay, so the thing that you see here is you press any key to start the configuration importer. If you have an old device, or if you have a new device that you're setting up and you have old configuration that you want to import into the new device, you press the key once that show up, and then you will go through the process of importing whatever you have in the USB drive to import it into the new firewall. So that's what that is for. We don't need that per se because it's a clean installation, a new installation. So we're just going to let it run through, and press any key to start the manual interface assignment. Again, we're not going to do that because the interface is going to automatically get picked up, and we don't have to worry too much about that. And once we get in there, we can make those changes. But for now, again, we're just going to let it go through the initial boot up phase. Okay, so once it's done booting up, it's going to give you a couple of options. One, it's going to tell you like, hey, this is the LAN IP address. So what will happen is that if you were to connect a device directly into the switch that I showed you guys, so if you were to connect the device directly into that switch, which is the the LAN network, you should be able to access the firewall. Now, I'm not directly connected into that switch, so if I was to enter this IP address right now, I would not be able to access the GUI for OPNsense. But if you were and you enter that IP address, then you should be able to access that, and you can go through the configuration that way. But if you want to as well, what you're going to do, you're going to go through, or at least what we're going to do is we're going to go through the installation process in here. There are two users for the OPNsense installation. There's the root user, which is the user that you use to manage the device and manage and configure different settings. And you can log into that user by typing root, and then the password, the default password is OPNsense, all lowercase. And then there's the installer user. The installer user is the user that you use to install OPNsense on a new device like I have. So for that user, you just type in installer. So installer, and then click enter, and then the password is OPNsense, all lowercase, so OPN. And then once you enter that, it's going to load the installation process, right? Again, the two users. One is the root users to manage the device through the GUI, which is the root user. Default password is OPNsense. And one is the installer user, which is the user that can take you through the installation process for a new device. It's going to ask you what keyboard layout you want to use. So you can just click continue, because the US is the default. So you can just click continue. So I'll click enter. And then here it gives you an option. Do you want to use ZFS file system, or do you want to use UFS file system? And then they have different configuration, other modes, import configuration. Like I said earlier, if you want to import configuration from like an old firewall to a new firewall, password reset, force reboot, force halt, that kind of thing. In our case, we're doing the ZFS installation because that's the file system that we want to use. UFS you can use, but it's pretty old. I don't know why you want to, but I guess it depends on what you're doing. But in our case, we're using ZFS. So you go ahead and go to that and then click enter. So on the next page, it's going to ask you what RAID type do you want to use. Again, if you have different, all I have is the internal storage that came with this device. If you have more storage than storage, and you feel like you want to do fancy and you want to set up a specific RAID, you can choose from those options that they have here. It's very similar to the TrueNAS video. So if you do want to understand what these RAID types are, you can look at the TrueNAS video, because that also uses the ZFS file system. So in our case, I'm using Stripe because I only have one storage device, and that's the one that came with the device itself, and it's internal. I don't want to add anything else to it, so we're just going to go ahead and use Stripes because there is no sort of redundancy or any sort of like RAID setup for this guy. So we're going to go ahead and click enter. And then it's going to tell you to select the device. In our case, it's the first one. This is, of course, the internal storage that came with the device where we want OPNsense to be installed. So in our case, it's the first one because that's the one that came pre-installed on the device, the storage that came pre-installed on the device. So I'm going to go ahead and click. For this, you want to click space to select, and then enter once you click space. It's going to tell you that the regular everything is going to be destroyed on this thing. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And as you can see on the bottom left hand corner, it's going to start going through the installation process. The installation process does take a while, so I'm gonna let it do its thing. Again, it takes a while. Don't flip out, don't worry. It just takes a few for the installation process to go through, so let it do its thing. Okay, so once the installation is done, it will give you two options. The first option is to reset the root user password, and the second option is just to complete the installation by rebooting the device. So I am just gonna go ahead and reset the root user password. You can set whatever password you want. Enter, and it's gonna ask you to type again. Enter. And that's the root user password to manage the CLI, like I was talking about earlier. It takes a while to come back up, so just give it a few minutes. And then once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and go to the second option, complete installation. And then once I click that, I want to remove the USB because I don't want it to boot back into USB once it comes back up. And then from there, we should be able to access the GUI and then be able to log into it. So let's go ahead and click complete installation. And then we'll say reboot now, because we don't want to halt the device. All right. And then we're going to disconnect the USB. And it's going to do its thing, and it's going to restart. It takes a while to restart. And you're going to see that same thing that was saw earlier. It's going to give you the IP address for the LAN and then the IP address for the WAN. And then from there, we're going to try to see if we can connect to the LAN and be able to access the GUI. And that's as far as the installation goes, that would be it. But let's let it load back up just to make sure we have everything. And this phase, of course, takes a while. This is it loading without the USB being connected to it, so the installation is completed on the device itself. So let's give it a few. Okay, so once the device boot back up, it's going to give you the LAN IP address and the WAN IP address. And what we're going to do now is we're going to need to connect to the LAN to be able to access the GUI for OPNsense. So what we're going to do is, as far as the installation goes, this is pretty much it for the installation. Installation is completed. Now we're going to move on to the second part where we connect one of our devices to the LAN and be able to access the GUI so we can make some configurations.
In this video, we're going to try to access the GUI of this guy, and to be able to do that, we need to be connected to the LAN network, right? So we have the WAN, we now have our firewall set up, and then we have a LAN, which is pretty much going into this mini switch right here. And then we have an Ethernet cable that we're going to use and connect that to our laptop. So now we're underneath this network, which is underneath the firewall. So now we should be able to hit the GUI of this guy from this guy because we're connected to the LAN. I hope that makes sense. So once you go through the setup, the initial setup, you want to make sure whatever device that you're going to use to access the GUI of this guy, right, is connected to the LAN that is provided by this guy.
So now that we have our LAN network set up and our laptop is connected to our LAN network, we should be able to get to the GUI of the firewall, the OPNsense firewall that we just set up, by just typing in the IP address that was provided to us during the installation phase. Now, if you don't remember what that IP address is, which is 192.168.1.1, but if you don't remember it, that firewall is now acting as the default gateway on our network. So what we can do to find out what the IP address is, if you're on Windows, you just type in CMD and do IP config, and that should give you the IP address for this device, and it should give you what the default gateway is. And the default gateway, again, as I said, is the firewall because the laptop is connected to the LAN network. And then if you just do enter, it's going to take you to the login page. For the login page, remember that we reset our password, the root password, during this installation process. Now, if you haven't reset that password, the default username is root and the password is OPNsense, all lowercase. But if you did reset that password, make sure you remember that password because you're going to need the password to be able to log in here. Because once you change the root password, you're going to need that password to be able to log in here. So the default username is root. And I'm going to enter the password that I entered during installation, and now I'm logged in. So this is pretty much what it looks like. You have your dashboard. OPNsense is new to me too as well, but it's really good. The GUI is really nice. The interface is really nice. So real quick, you have kind of like a quick highlight of what your internet flow looks like from the basic dashboard. You have license, you have password, and you can log out. You have reporting. I mean, I can spend all day. I feel like there can be a dedicated video to go through all of these things. You have reporting, you have system level configuration. So you have things like access, configuration, firmware. You have the wizard. We're going to go through that. That's the initial. It's good to go through the wizard for initial setup, and we're going to go through that. You have the interfaces. And this is what I was talking about, wherein I was saying that if you don't necessarily want to go through the configuration of the interfaces during the whole installation process, once you come in here, you're able to change things and able to make different changes and be like, hey, this interface is the WAN and that interface is the LAN. It automatically picked it up already, so we don't have to do that. So you can make those changes here. You have devices that are connected to it. There's so much stuff here, man. And again, the GUI, the GUI is really, really nice. So as far as the installation, you have NAT, you have VPN, and you have IPsec, OpenVPN, and WireGuard, and you have a lot of other configuration. And this is some of the configuration that I most likely will be going through, because when I do set up a specific application, if a port needs to be open or a specific thing needs to be done on the firewall level, and then you guys are going to go see me go through a lot of this configuration of the firewall and making changes to it in a way where I need to make it work for myself. But this is pretty much it as far as the installation of the whole firewall go. Once you get to this point, your firewall is installed, and then you can make basic configuration changes as you see fit. For now, we're gonna go through the quick wizard setup just to kind of give you guys an idea of what to go through once you're done with the installation, to get things up and running for you. Because again, this thing is pretty extensive, so to be able to use everything, you're going to have to spend some time trying to understand what exactly you're trying to do, and then now and that and that. But for now, what you want to do, you want to go to systems, all right, and then you're going to go to wizard, and this is the quick wizard startup. You click next. It's actually new. What is the host name? The host name, you can call it whatever you want. In this case, it's called OPNsense. To domain name, you can call it whatever you want. So you can call it, like in my case, I can call it chromatech.local or whatever it is that you prefer to call your domain. Language is English. Premier DNS. I don't have a DNS server set up right now in this environment, right? I don't have any sort of like a Pi-hole or anything like that set up. Those are all the things that I want to set up eventually. I have a lot of things to set up. All the things that I want to set up in this lab environment. So a lot more stuff to come. This guy, the override DNS, so allow DNS server to be overridden by DHCP, PPP, or WAN. So it basically means that if you don't set your server manually, or you have this check, whatever DNS server is here is going to be overridden by what is provided by like the WAN. In my case, let's say WAN, or the DHCP server, whatever DNS is provided by that. This is going to override the DNS server. But if you don't have it checked, then you have your own DNS server set up, then you don't necessarily need it to be overridden by these other guys, right? Because you want things to look at your DNS server and your network. Again, I don't have that set up, so I'm gonna leave it checked for now. For this section, for the unbound DNS, so you have the enable DNS resolver. This is kind of the DNS resolver that came with OPNsense. So again, I don't have any sort of DNS in my environment yet, so I'm gonna leave that check. Enable DNSSEC, I can never say that word right. Support. This is kind of like extra protection for your DNS, so it prevents things like spoofing and all those other things that are specific towards the DNS specific attack. So you can enable it if you want. And then the second one is just like a harder security rule for DNSSEC. I don't think that I want to enable that right now. I can enable this, but I don't think I want to enable like a stricter rule yet. Again, I have a lot of playing around with this that I have to do, a lot of configuration that I want to walk through and try to kind of like finish up. But there's so much to set up in the lab environment I'm setting up right now. So I'm trying to get everything up and running. And once I start building, I'll make more changes to things. So for now, that's fine. You're going to click next. And then here, it's asking you to select your time, server, host name, and time zone. If I have a NTP set up, MTP server, the NTP server set up in my environment, I can just point it to that, to an internal server, but I don't. So whatever it's looking to right now is fine. Maybe something I can change in the future just to kind of have a little bit of control in regards to like having an NTP server in my environment. So maybe I'll set it up. Maybe I don't know. So we'll see. So for now, we're just pointing it to this guy, and the time zone is fine for now. I'll make changes to that. So go ahead and click next. And from here, it's talking about the WAN configuration, the WAN interface. So right now I have so the way it's set up right now is that I have a router, and then I have my firewall set up. So I have some sort of like a double NAT going on, but that's perfectly fine. And it's DHCP. DHCP is enabled on that router anyway. So I don't have a static IP address because, you know, they can cost money. So I don't have that right now. So it has DHCP server, which is perfectly fine. But if you have a static IP on any one of this configuration, you're welcome to put that in there and then make that config. But again, I don't have anything, and it's the IP address that's been assigned to this firewall right now is DHCP assigned. Rest of the configuration, really, again, you don't have to worry about those too much because you're not really entering a static IP. The RFC1918 private network. So this is basically saying that block all private network when it's enabled, all private IP. So block private network, but private IP when it's enabled. I don't want to do that because I said I'm double NATing right now, right? I'm underneath a router. The firewall is underneath the router just because one, I want to get things configured, and two, I always like to put things underneath a router when I'm going through configuration because I don't want to mistakenly leak my public IP. But again, if I leak it, I just restart the router because it's not static. So, but anyways, I don't need to enable that right now because I say I'm double NAT and it's underneath a router, which is in kind of a private network, so I don't want to be blocking things from that. For this guy, is basically just blocking IP addresses that are not routable on the internet, so I will leave that check for now. But for this guy, I need that to be on check. So that's pretty much it. Again, not a static or DHCP. I'm going to click next. Here for your LAN IP address, you can set your IP address here or what you want your LAN IP address to use. You can configure that there or set that here. And then you can choose a subnet once you have that configured, once you decide which IP address you want to use. For now, again, I'm going to leave that as default. Pretty much going to change everything, but I wanted to go through with you guys just to kind of see the configuration. But I will change this eventually, just to kind of set it the way I wanted to set it. But hey, if you want to change that, you can go ahead and change that now. And this is for your LAN network, right? So this is going to go directly into the switch that we connected to. So click next. All right, so here if you want to reset the root password, so the password that you initially set on the installation process, the one that we were able to use to log into the GUI, if you want to change that, you can change that here, but I don't right now, so I'm gonna click next. And then once that's done, it's going to tell you that like, hey, everything is good to go. Just click on reload and let things load. Okay, so once the reload is done, it's going to look, congratulations, OPNsense is now configured. But now we should be able to have internet. So if we just type in Google, for example, yeah, and I like soccer, so let's type soccer, and there you go. Yep, so not now, of course, but yeah, so now we have internet. So that's kind of the basic configuration for your firewall setup. OPNsense went through the installation, went through the basic configuration, and again, as time goes on for me, I'm going to make a lot of changes, and for every change that I made that I feel like it's very significant, don't you stress, I'm definitely going to make a video about those changes to try to kind of help out in terms of like someone else that's trying to do the same thing that I'm trying to do as well. That's pretty much it, guys. That is it, guys. Thank you guys for watching. As always, I really appreciate it. This is one more addition to Lab Environment. It's time to come together. In the next video, we're going to take a look at the physical infrastructure and how it looks like so far, and we're going to talk about how much it cost me to put everything together. And because the idea is that I want to build a small lab environment, there's a lot of things that I need to install and set up in this environment. So we're going to take a look at it and see what it looks like and what it cost me so far. But for today, that's pretty much all I have for you guys for this video. I will see you guys on the next one. And as always, do not forget to stay geeking.